A pastor walks into federal court wearing an ankle monitor. Sounds like the beginning of a joke, right? Except this is real life, and the story behind it is absolutely insane. John Paul Miller just pleaded not guilty to federal charges connected to his wife's death, and what I'm about to tell you will make your jaw drop. Stick with me, because the timeline of this case gets darker with every detail, and there's something at the end that's going to make you question everything. In this video, we're talking about John Paul Miller, the Myrtle Beach pastor who became internet infamous back in May 2024. And before you ask, yes, this is the guy who announced his wife's death from the pulpit in the most bizarre way possible and then told his congregation not to talk about it. Well, guess what? We're all talking about it now. On January 12th, Miller appeared in federal court facing cyber-stalking charges and charges for lying to federal investigators. But here's the thing that's going to blow your mind. This isn't just about what happened to his wife, Mica. There's a pattern here that involves another woman, another suspicious death, and a timeline that's going to make you say, wait, what? So grab your coffee, settle in, and let me walk you through this absolute mess of a case. Let's start with what just happened. John Paul Miller walked into federal court and pleaded not guilty to two charges: cyberstalking and making false statements to federal investigators. Now, the judge set an unsecured bond of $100,000. For those who don't know, that means he doesn't have to pay anything up front, but if he violates the conditions, he owes that money. And speaking of conditions, they're strict. He has to wear an ankle monitor. He had to surrender his passport. He can't contact Mica's family or any potential witnesses. No weapons, limited alcohol use. And he has to regularly check in with the U.S. Probation Office. If convicted, he's looking at up to 7 years in prison combined between both charges, plus $250,000 in fines. But here's what I need you to understand. These charges stem from a pattern of alleged harassment that started in November 2022 and continued all the way until Mica's death in April 2024. We're talking about a year and a half of alleged torment. The indictment claims he posted a nude photo of Mica online without her consent. He allegedly placed tracking devices on her car. And get this, on one occasion, he contacted her over 50 times in a single day. 50 times. And then, prosecutors say, when federal investigators came asking questions, he lied about it. But to understand how we got here, we need to go back to that viral moment that started it all. It was May 2024 when this case exploded onto the internet. John Paul Miller was preaching a Sunday sermon at his church like it was any other day. He went through the entire service, preached his message, and everything seemed normal. And then, right at the very end, he casually announced that his wife had died by suicide the night before. But it wasn't just what he said, it was how he said it. The delivery was off, casual, almost rehearsed. And then he told the congregation not to talk about it, not to spread rumors, just move on. Red flags everywhere, right? The internet went absolutely wild with speculation. People started digging into their relationship, and what they found was deeply disturbing. Mica had just filed for divorce 2 weeks earlier. She had been documenting alleged abuse and harassment. Friends and family members started coming forward with stories about John Paul's controlling behavior. Police investigated whether he was involved in her death, but ultimately concluded that Mica acted alone. The official ruling was that she unalived herself. But here's where it gets complicated. Just because he didn't physically harm her doesn't mean he isn't responsible for creating the conditions that led to her death. And that's exactly what these federal charges are addressing. The question isn't, did he unalive her anymore? The question is, did he drive her to it through systematic harassment and abuse? And I'll come back to why that distinction matters, but first, we need to talk about the other woman in this story. Remember when I said there was a pattern? Buckle up. 4 days after Mica's death, John Paul Miller was spotted out having drinks and laughing with a parishioner named Susie Skinner. 4 days. Now, here's where this gets absolutely wild. Susie Skinner's own husband allegedly died by unaliving himself years earlier after discovering that she was having an affair with John Paul Miller. Let me say that again because I need you to catch this. Susie's husband took his own life after finding out about her affair with this pastor. And that case is still open with the FBI. So we have two people connected to John Paul Miller who died by unaliving themselves. Two spouses who discovered affairs and ended up dead. And if you're thinking, surely they weren't together immediately after Mica died, well, John Paul's first ex-wife, Allison Williams, filed documents claiming that the affair between Miller and Susie was an open secret back in 2021. She said it caused embarrassment to their children and was one of the reasons she sought sole custody. In an interview in April 2025, Miller claimed he and Susie didn't start dating until January 2025, months after Mica's death. But Susie herself testified in one of Miller's SA cases and admitted to having an adulterous affair with him. So somebody's not telling the truth about the timeline. And here's the kicker. This past summer, John Paul Miller and Susie Skinner got married. If this was a Netflix series, you wouldn't believe it. But this is real life. Now let's zoom out for a second because there's even more to this story. John Paul Miller is also facing separate civil lawsuits from two women who have accused him of SA when they were minors. The FBI raided his home in November. His first wife, Allison, divorced him in 2015 after discovering he was having an affair with Mica Miller, who had joined his church as a teenager. Miller married Mica in 2018. So we have a pattern of predatory relationships with vulnerable women, affairs while married, alleged abuse and control, two dead spouses connected to his affairs, federal charges for cyberstalking and lying to investigators, SA allegations involving minors. This isn't just one bad decision. This is a documented pattern of behavior spanning over a decade. And here's what really gets me. He was a pastor, someone people looked up to for moral guidance, someone who was supposed to protect the vulnerable, not exploit them. The trial is set to begin in March, and we're going to learn a lot more when prosecutors present their evidence. So what do we make of all this? Here's my take. The federal charges against John Paul Miller represent something truly significant. They acknowledge that you don't have to physically harm someone to destroy their life. Cyberstalking, harassment, posting intimate photos without consent, tracking someone's movements. These are all forms of abuse that can have devastating psychological impacts. Mica Miller may have technically acted alone in her final moments, but the federal government is saying, we need to look at what led to those moments. And I think that's crucial. For too long, AB users have hidden behind the fact that they didn't leave physical bruises. But psychological abuse, digital harassment, coercive control, these things are real, they're damaging, and they need to be taken seriously. Whether John Paul Miller is ultimately convicted or not, this case has shown a spotlight on patterns of behavior that too often go unaddressed, especially within religious communities where leaders can wield enormous power over vulnerable people. The fact that two people connected to him through affairs have died by unaliving themselves should give everyone pause. The fact that he's facing SA allegations involving minors should give everyone pause. The fact that the FBI felt there was enough evidence to bring federal charges should give everyone pause. All right, that's where we are with the John Paul Miller case. What do you think? Do you believe the federal charges are justified? Do you think there's more to this story that we haven't seen yet? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And please, keep it respectful. This involves real people and real tragedy. If you want to stay updated on this case and others like it, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on because I'll be covering the trial when it happens in March. Hit that like button if you found this breakdown helpful, and share this video with anyone who's been following this case. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.